Hey, welcome to Dirk Island. This is the weekend show where we watch interesting documentaries and talk about them.
Oh yeah, I mean at a runtime of just under an hour, it felt about 40 to 50 minutes too long.
Okay, so we just watched Fraud, which is a documentary available for purchase on Apple Movies. It's essentially a found footage documentary, meaning that all of the stuff that you see is unscripted.
A family's home video footage.
Yeah, it's essentially a basic American family that has put up all their home videos online. And a documentarian and a talented editor decided to take all those footage and construct a story which seems like it's actually happening, which is a story of a family that commits essentially insurance fraud and then goes on the run, destroys their car, gets essentially a new identity. But none of it actually happened in real life. The whole thing is fake. When you're watching it, you're like, how could this be fake?
The concept, in theory, the idea of showing that as a family, if you put everything online, someone could take that footage and misconstrue and even maybe accuse you of things. Kind of the dangers of footage and editing and how you shouldn't necessarily believe what you see on video would be an interesting point to prove. I mean, great point, interesting concept. When I read the log line, I thought that sounds fascinating. I want to watch it. And just about 10 minutes in to the end of the film, I, was over it. I was over the concept. The editing may be artful in that it creates a story out of random footage where there was none, but each cut is about 10 seconds long at longest, which is very jarring.
What I can say is that having watched it, it does have one point to make, which is that you can string together nonsense into a conspiracy. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the point that maybe the maker is trying to make this directly or not, but it is in one of the reviews I read, where they compared it to some other documentaries that have scripted moments, which we know happens in some reality, or unscripted television has things that are essentially scripted, or timelines reordered in a way to make a story look like it's happening when it's not, right? Mm-hmm. So thinking about this as a more of a meta comment on the genre, and what people believe once the dominoes start falling in a direction. I mean, it's when you're watching this, you can't believe that anything other than insurance fraud is taking place in front of your eyes in a sequence. But in reality, that's what happens a lot of times on reality television. That's what happens especially in conspiracy-type documentaries. Mm-hmm. And so one of the ones that someone mentioned is Vaxxed. Some documentary. I've only seen part of it. We can watch it another time. But one where the point is the point that needs to be made, like for whatever reason it is very once people start believing that the outcome, that all the things that they see start confirming that narrative. Yeah. And so when you're watching this at the very beginning, you just get a few cues that a movie maker would give you to show a family that's over-obsessed with consumerism and has financial difficulties, which is very normal in the United States, especially if you take everything they've ever done and you just pack every shopping bag they've ever put onto camera. It's just a bunch of shopping bags and bills. Yeah. And you're like, if you just look at someone and it looks like all they're doing is shopping bags and bills, then you think they are an obsessed consumer with a mountain of debt, and you don't see the entire context of their life, which is that anyone who lives in the United States has at least some shopping and some bills, so there's absolutely no way to avoid it. But if you cut it in a certain way, you can prejudice an audience, and then you can create a completely fictionalized narrative, which is maybe the only piece of redeeming value of this, and not making it watchable, but just as a point of, once you get someone on a narrative, you can call something that is unscripted footage a documentary, and or maybe this really isn't a documentary, but that's up to debate. But you can get people to believe a completely untrue conspiracy because of the power of the genre.
Yeah.
Because of the confirmation bias. And once you see a few cues, then everything you see after that moment starts confirming your narrative instead of is independently evaluated.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting concept and idea, but it really wasn't a good articulation of that. It wasn't emotionally compelling either. There's no moments of dialogue, or your brain does piece together a story, but most of the scenes, even when presumably the family has committed fraud and are on the run from the police, there's no emotion, there's no depth, there's no arcs of emotion throughout, and the characters too. The wife is the primary subject in the camera. You get no sense of what she's going through internally, what she's like personality wise, and I think unless you can make, it's kind of like a good analogy would be with comedy, right? Unless you get people to really laugh at a subversive idea, you haven't done anything new. That you're just lecturing.
Yes.
You have to make it entertaining and well executed, or else all you're doing is just giving a lecture, which is the quintessential challenge of good art. And you have to jump that hurdle.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's the entirely appropriate critique for this. I was reading that a lot of the critiques really were people who felt deceived by this being called a documentary at all. And for me, when I view documentary as a subgenre of unscripted, as a broader genre, which also includes reality television and all sorts of other manipulative editing, manipulative situation making, anything like that, where documentary is just a genre of that, then this doesn't feel such, to me, it doesn't feel a fraud as in I'm can't understand what's going on. The real failure is what you're describing, which is that it wasn't that compelling. It was completely unwatchable. And although I think that the filmmaker might have had a very good idea and might have some very incisive commentary to make, and might actually say, for if you watch other documentaries where it is very compelling and that there's some sort of conspiracy or agenda is being advanced, you realize it's very easy once you prime an audience to just keep presenting one fact, and everything starts forming its own narrative where truth is not actually the primary focus anymore. And for us to believe that documentary is a truth-telling genre is a little bit self-deluding. Thanks very much for watching us. Please subscribe on YouTube if you want to keep up and learn about more documentaries that we're watching. And also, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts if you want to listen to the audio version. Thanks very much.
Thanks.